Hello everybody. Today I'm reporting from my kitchen for All About Sweet Potatoes, Part 2. Now, just a quick recap. Last week in Part 1, I showed you a little bit about how sweet potatoes grow, what kind of plant they are, and where they come from. And I dug a couple up, and then I left us with a thought that when I do this part of the video, I want to sample 3 different kinds of sweet potatoes. And the reason I'm going to sample 3 different kinds today, after cooking them in my kitchen here, is I'm always curious if the sweet potatoes that we grow are as sweet as the ones in the grocery store. And if you remember, I mentioned something called curing the sweet potatoes. That's where you're supposed to at least store them in a warm room. Usually they say about 80 degrees with some humidity, so kind of a warm, damp area for about a week. And then you can store them like you normally would in the cabinet or on the counter. So I don't always have the perfect conditions for curing the sweet potatoes that I take home and store. So I've been curious if, how much of a difference it really makes. So today, I'm going to be trying one sweet potato that I dug up 5 days ago and didn't do anything to cure. I just put it on the counter. One sweet potato that I did try to keep in a warm, moist environment for about a week, and then it's been storing for another week, so it's about 2 weeks old. And then another sweet potato that's from the grocery store, and I'm guessing that the ones at the grocery store have been cured by the farmer, because they're always usually pretty sweet. So I'm excited. I'm going to show you a simple way to cook a sweet potato so that you can really taste the natural sweetness in the potato. And then I'll give you a little review of which one tasted the sweetest, or if I can tell any big differences between them. Alright, so now it is time to get ready to cook. Let's go over to the counter. Alright, so we've got the 3 candidates here on the counter. From left to right, we have the sweet potato that I just dug up. In the middle is the one that I dug up and have been curing myself. And then on the right is the sweet potato from the grocery store. They all look a little bit different, but I'm going to try to make sure that we keep track of which is which. So I'm going to keep them in this order the rest of the video. Fresh is on the left. Home cured is in the middle, and grocery store is on the right. But before we do any of our prep work or getting ready to cook them, the first thing we need to do is go ahead and turn the oven on to preheat it, since we'll be baking the sweet potatoes today. So when you preheat the oven, you just turn it on the temperature you're going to be baking at. I believe this recipe called for 450 degrees. And then we just wait a little while because we want the oven to be nice and hot when we put the potatoes in to bake. One more step before we season the sweet potatoes. We need to wash them off really well because, as we know, they were growing in the ground. So we don't want any gritty pieces of dirt or sand on there. So I'm going to scrub these down real quickly first. Alright, so I couldn't show you that whole process because I needed both hands, but I just gave them a good scrubbing down with the brush that I use to wash dishes, and I think they're pretty clean. Now, these sweet potatoes, we're just going to bake them or roast them whole. We don't really need to do much in the way of cutting them, but I think I will look, and sometimes on the ends of the potatoes, they can be just a little bit dried up or a little dirty looking, so I'll probably cut off any ends that don't look too good. That one looks fine. So, just to make sure there isn't any really bad looking spots on there, we can cut those off. And then, next thing we'll do is season them up. Alright, so it's a super simple recipe we're going to be following today. I'm just going to put a little bit of oil on the sweet potatoes. I'm using olive oil today, but you can use any kind of oil or even a little bit of melted butter if you want. So first I'm just going to drizzle a little bit on each sweet potato. and then just kind of get that coated all the surfaces. Rub it in a little bit. So the reason we're putting oil on the sweet potatoes, when you heat up oil, it helps things get kind of crispy and crunchy. So this will help make the skin a little bit crispier and just kind of help out the flavor in general. So after we put our oil on, I'm just going to use 2 simple seasonings today. We're not going to really want to do them up seasoned too much because we don't want anything to kind of overpower the sweet potato flavor. Normally I would probably season them a little more, but today it's all about the sweet potato flavor and that testing to kind of see which one has the sweetest flavor naturally. And so the only seasonings we'll be using today is a little bit of salt. And I'm also going to grind some pepper on there. I'll need both hands for that. But basically that's it. A little bit of oil, a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, and they are good to go. All right, we've got our potatoes salted and peppered, and they are just about ready for the oven, except we can't bake them on this plastic cutting board. It's not meant for the oven. It would melt. So I'm just going to transfer them over to a metal baking sheet. Remember, on the far left, we've got the freshest one. The one that I cured is in the middle, and then this one on the right is the store-bought. All right, they're ready for the oven. Just gonna wait for that to preheat, and then it'll be time for them to go on in. I just realized I forgot an important step, but luckily they aren't in the oven yet. So you need to kind of all around the sweet potatoes poke them with a fork, and that actually helps some of the steam that builds up inside them vent and come out of the skin. Otherwise, they can sort of pop and crack from what I understand. So I'm going to finish doing that with both hands, and then they'll be ready to go in the oven. Okay, I'm being real careful because it's a hot oven. Just going to slide them in and set a timer for about 45 minutes. All right, sweet potatoes, good luck. All right, you might be able to hear them sizzling in there. They look a little different probably. So now I've got my oven mitt on to protect my hand. I'm just going to really carefully take the pan out of the oven. All right, I'm gonna leave it on the stove where it won't melt anything and show you what we have to do next. So this is where a fork comes in handy again. I'm just gonna make sure they're tender. So I wanna make sure the sweet potatoes are soft and aren't tough or anything. So if the fork easily, the skin will be a little tough, but if the fork easily goes through the meat of the sweet potato, they should be ready. All right, however, they're not ready to eat just yet. They're really hot, and I don't want to burn my tongue or anything, so I'm going to let them cool before I cut into them and do the taste test. One other thing, we also have to turn off the oven. We don't want to leave that burning. That's just going to keep the kitchen real hot and waste energy. So turn that off. All right, so I've got the sweet potatoes out of the oven. They've cooled nicely, and I've cut them in half. Let's take a quick look at each one. All right, so remember on the far left, we've got our homegrown, 5 days, did not really do anything to cure it. In the middle, we've got the one that I let sit to cure for a little while, as best I could. And then here on the right is our store-bought. You kind of notice that that fresh homegrown one is the darkest orange. I'm not sure if it's because it's a different variety or what, but it does look pretty, they all look pretty good to me. All right, so I guess I'm ready to go ahead and taste each one. Get a nice piece of the fresh uncured sweet potato here. Now remember, I didn't put any sugar, butter, seasonings on the inside of these, so I'm pretty much just tasting plain sweet potato. And that's pretty good. It's got sort of a slight sweet taste to it. It's not super sweet, but that's, if I got that at the store, I'd be happy with the sweetness there as a sweet potato. So it's good to know that even if you don't cure a sweet potato, it's still gonna have a little sweetness to it. Now I'm curious if the other two will be sweeter. Let's find out. All right, so here I've got the homegrown, sort of cured sweet potato. Let's see. I would say, I'm gonna taste a little more just to see. I would say it's about as sweet as the first one, but oddly enough, it almost tastes a little less sweet to me. That's really interesting. Now, this grocery store one is the one I'm most curious about because that's the one I hear about that is going to be properly cured. Because when you buy a sweet potato at the store, you want it to be sweet, especially if you're using it to make some sort of a dessert kind of thing. So, this is really the moment of truth. All right, we've got our store-bought sweet potato. It's got some, it's got nice sweetness, but to be honest with you, it's not that much sweeter than either of these. And I'm really excited to find that out because in my years of growing sweet potatoes, I kept hearing, oh, you have to cure them if you want them to be sweet. Well, it's good to know that you can just pick a sweet potato out of the ground and maybe wait a few days before you cook it, and it'll be nice and sweet. I'm gonna take another taste of this first one to compare again. Honestly, I think it's easily as sweet, if not sweeter, than the middle one, and about in the same league as the store-bought. So that's pretty cool. One other thing I think that a reason that people cure sweet potatoes, the one other reason I think that people cure sweet potatoes is it does make them store and last a little bit longer. So if you're going to be storing them, buying a bunch and storing them, like say you need them to last for a long time, they're not going to go bad as quickly. But that's really cool to know that a fresh sweet potato almost straight out of the ground is going to have just as much sweetness as a store-bought or one that you might cure in your house. So if you get your hands on a sweet potato this fall that might be homegrown, whether it's from the school garden or maybe from a family member or friend, know that it's going to make just as good of a pie or casserole or even just a baked sweet potato like I did as one you can buy from the store. All right, everyone. Well, I hope you enjoyed this fun little part 2 to all about sweet potatoes. I sure had a lot of fun making these sweet potatoes and tasting them and kind of being my inner food critic here. So I hope you all have a happy Thanksgiving, and I hope that everyone's able to safely celebrate and enjoy some good food. And I look forward to seeing you back in December. All right. Have a great week off. Bye-bye.